apps. But when it comes to the self, it is something we grossly misunderstand and give very little attention to. And the thing about the self and the mind is the state of our mind, the state of our subconscious being, leaves us subjectively seated in this idea of the self, which turns it into this elusive character no one can point a finger at, because it's pointing the finger, looking for itself. What is going on there? Our subconscious mind is home to our knowledge base, all the things we know, things you learn in school and stuff, and our beliefs, and a record of our experiences from the past and our memories of them, and the story we've told ourselves about what happened and why we felt the way that we felt. The greatest, hardest wired ones are the times in our life where we had the most heightened emotional experiences. Many of those come, in our childhood when we don't even speak English and we're unable to understand what has led to us feeling some awful way. You get hit by a sibling, or your mother takes your milk away from you, and you feel completely betrayed, and you have no intelligence to put together or form some type of understanding as to what's going on. Maybe you were about to throw up, maybe you had already drank a gallon of milk. Your parent leaves you at the babysitter to go to work to make money to buy you food. You feel left and abandoned with no intelligence developed, words known to tell yourself any sense of story as to what's going on. So anyways, our subconscious mind, home to our past experiences, home to our knowledge base, home to our beliefs and our understanding of the world altogether, but also in the subconscious mind lives this idea of ourself, our identity. We have this body, this bodily self. In our mind, in your mind, you have this idea of it, centered around your name, as to who you are. So there's this identity that lives in our subconscious mind. And we call it myself. And in that way, when we say myself and the self in general, what we are referring to is our mind, our subconscious mind, which is from the place, which is where you're going to be seated if you're stuck in this subjective loop that I'm talking about. If myself to you is still one word that you're identified as, then you're seated in your subconscious mind with this idea of who you are, period. This happens because of our name, and to some degree, and I want to say it's not like you stood a chance for this not to happen. This happens to humans, I should say. This happens to humans, and this is how. From this place of not understanding what's going on, why we feel the way that we do, and most importantly, who we are, it becomes the very thing that we go after. We just want to be somebody, and we just want to have an understanding of who we are. We want to know who to be. And we start searching for that. As this misunderstanding, lack of understanding, no understanding of what's going on is taking place, we're actively doing nothing actually other than trying to piece together this puzzle. We reach some checkpoint where we realize that puzzle is to understand who we are and who we need to be. From a place of being a child, that is to make other people happy with us, specifically our parents. Who do our parents want us to be? To not get in trouble? We become that person. Who is that person? As a child, when we're born, your name, if you think about it, is given to this body that you're born into as, and your name is given to this body, although your parents have likely already developed this giant space of who you're going to be and need to be for them. etherically in their thought form, your name is not given to this idea of who you're going to be. That's who you're going to wind up getting lost in. Your name is given to you as this body when you're born, and there you are. By the time you realize, so from this place, who am I? Who am I? Who do I need to be? Growing up, you hear mama, papa, ball, bottle, whatever. You also hear your name over and over called to get your attention. And habitually, you start giving it to it. And then the time comes where from this body, from this place of with our intelligence, with our mind, trying to find out who are we, what are we trying to understand, it wires together that our name is who we are. Oh, that's who I am. Before we get all looking into the mirror, intelligent enough and capable enough to understand, I'm this human in this body with a mind that's allowing me to realize this, that is consciousness. I find my name. And from this body, I point my finger at my name and say, that's who I am. Fuck. Because from a place of not having an understanding of who we are in this body as a human being, our first, from that place, idea of who we are gets pinned to this name, gets pinned to this character that our parents want us to be, that our parents have built this giant place for in our life. And that's who we become. That's who we tell ourselves we are. And it's a gift. It's a true gift. And I want to be clear. Nobody's at fault. Like I said, this is what happens to humans. That's how to be a parent. This is how to be a child. It's what happens. And now, from that point forward, dude, our parents play a giant role in our life. And if I was going to call this the parenting problem, I would say because this is something that needs more attention and awareness. Like I said, not that your parents who did this, unless you've got just incredibly conscious parents, or they ran out of your life, did this to you as how to be a parent. They're not bad parents for doing it. They're good parents for doing it. That's why I say the parenting problem is because we need to look at what a good parent is. Because to tend to you as a child, your body that was named and born first with what you need to survive, your survival needs, food and water and whatnot, is amazing and great. And they're not going to stop doing that likely until you're able to do that for yourself. That's to keep you alive. Are you going to be? Yes. Okay, now who are you going to be? You get fed the same way as you do food and water. To become who it is that your parents want you to be. It's that simple, really. There goes my light. And from that point until, if ever, you realize that's who you've become before you became anyone else, that's going to be the root of your being. And because you became that from this place of not having an understanding or an intelligence that would leave you capable of having an understanding into being that, you are lost in it. That is yourself. And in this way, if I were to ask someone in that state, who are you? Myself. It's the same thing as saying my name. It's the same thing as saying my subconscious mind, which as we use the word the mind today, we refer to the subconscious mind. Who are you? You would say my name, myself, my mind. Not my body. Not a body with a mind. Not this person. You would say, I'm myself. You'd be lost in the thought, your idea of who you are. Like I said, we have this bodily self, and then we have this idea of it. We get lost because of the state we come from in our body of being lost in the mind. As the subjective self, and until we lose ourself again, as if we never found it, that is just through admitting this to be the truth, we don't have one. Because we're identified as it. And if we ever go looking for it, we're not going to be able to find it. And if we try hard enough, we're going to lose it. Because when you go looking for yourself from a place of being seated in the subjective seat of it, that is in the subconscious mind, as this character, as this idea, identity, it is pointing the finger, trying to find itself. And it's not going to find it until it realizes what I'm telling you, and catches an objective perspective of itself as something separate from what is looking for it. That is, who am I? Myself. The word myself would become split in two. Oh, I'm not myself, I have a self. Who does it belong to? Myself. Who are you? Oh, my name. I'm not my name. I have a name. So who am I? If you're developed in your understanding of what's going on, and later in your hunt to become, you would say, who am I? My mind? No, I have a mind. So who am I? And here you are back in this same place of your body, looking to try to find out who you are. And this time, the very thing that set you free from that place, as it's hell, being in earth, on earth as a human, not knowing who you are. And if you lose that, your life is going to turn into a hunt for the answer to that question before it goes any further. And unfortunately, and I want to be clear to now again, no one's expecting you to do this. If you're losing yourself, that's because you're likely causing harm to other people and making other people feel even ways that you don't want them to in your take to get away from it. And only because you're capable of realizing what I'm telling you and overcoming this state of subconscious being, which requires consciousness, for you to realize yourself as this character that you're identified as and lost in the mind as from your body, to see yourself subconsciously as that requires consciousness. That is the very thing consciousness is. To point a finger at this self that I'm talking about is, in the act of doing that, you become conscious, because to do that, you slip out of the subconscious mind and look through the lens of the conscious mind. You know, there's only one way to view your subconscious mind, to truly point a finger at your subconscious mind. And that's consciously. You know, you can pass a psychology test. What is the subconscious mind? Well, it's the iceberg, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, that's like going to biology and it asking, what is the dog? And you're like, the dog is da. When you have a dog at your house, and what do you know about the dog? What this textbook just said? That's what everybody else thinks about the dog. That's what they say about the dog. But you have a dog at your house. And what you really have to offer to the question, what is the dog, is not that stupid thing how well you memorized what the textbook said. It's to tell about your experience of your dog. No one else has that. And to some beautiful artistic extent, that's what the dog is to you, I would hope. Not what your textbook said. Or there's probably stuff wrong with your dog in your head. The dog to you is your dog. So if you're going to try to understand the dog, say, what is my dog? Not what is the dog. If you're looking for your subconscious mind, if you're looking to understand the subconscious mind, it's what is my subconscious mind? Not what is the subconscious mind, because it's a stupid picture of an iceberg that you're going to find, period. And if you look for your understanding of the subconscious mind through the lens of what is my subconscious mind, that is, you're going to point a finger at it. It requires you to admit, first off, I don't know. I don't know. And see, an understanding at the end of the day, what you're going to realize your subconscious mind with, what you're going to use to develop your understanding of your subconscious mind, is the subconscious mind. And if you're seated and lost in it with this character that's looking for it now, which again requires you to admit, to even stand a chance, thinking is to be closed-minded. What does it mean to be closed-minded? It means to think you know. What do you think you know? That's where you're closed-minded. And until we realize we've drawn these circles around things that we think we know, we don't stand any chance to know anything about them. Because I could maybe have asked before this video, if you're still watching, and if you are, props to you. Because this is very hard stuff to hear, because it's the truth. And a lot of it. But maybe I could have asked you before this video, what is the subconscious? Do you know what the subconscious mind is? And you would have said, yeah. And I would have said, what? Okay, I'm trying to tell you right now what the subconscious mind is as far as yours. And I could talk for 8 hours, and I'm just trying to make it one. And it's nothing but an expression of the understanding I fought for very many years back, since the time that I realized myself to be lost, seated in this subject, not at the time understanding what that was, what this was, what was happening to me. But this is what I've realized it to be, and I fought very, very hard for this understanding, because it's not out there. And I fought so hard that my own subconscious mind to some extent has become an understanding of what yours is too, because I was so lost, and because it was so hard to not have anyone telling me what I needed to hear to understand, but having to ravage up information from 40 different people from 40 different days to even understand what I'm looking for, or have an idea of what it is that I was lost in, being the mind, and what I found as myself. So I lost myself. Who am I? Just fought very long to understand that I was looking for myself. I was like, oh, I'm myself. No, I'm not. Myself. I have a self. What is this self? I found it to be the subconscious mind. Only after I realized that's where I was lost and looking for it. And this happens, again, sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. It's because I was having to fight so hard, because I thought I knew what the mind was. I thought I knew what the subconscious mind was. Why would I think to look there? Until we go back and open up these circles, we stand no chance to gain any ground to knowing the very things that we think that we do. Sorry. When it comes to the subconscious mind, especially because that's what you're using to develop your understanding of things. So think about it. At the end of the day, here's your subconscious mind. So here's your subconscious mind, this giant circle. Can you see that? Okay. So we're going to say this is your subconscious mind. And in it's your knowledge base or whatever, and your beliefs and this seated identity that I'm talking about, and your past experiences and stuff. Again, that's your subconscious mind. And inside of it, here's your idea of the subconscious mind. You're using your subconscious mind to formulate this understanding of what the subconscious mind is, because you're overlooking the fact that you need to be looking for what is my subconscious mind, because you don't understand that the answer to that question solves the answer to the question, who am I? What is myself? How to find yourself? Is how to become conscious, is through understanding the subconscious mind. And that's, at the end of the day, what I have to offer you and what I'm even trying to say. If you lose yourself, if you're trying to find yourself, if you don't know who to be, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what to do with your life, if you don't know why other people's opinions drive you and steer you left and right, and we'll just stay with the self. If you've lost yourself, and if you're looking for yourself, and you don't know where to look, you can approach the answer to that question through an experience of your subconscious mind. Because when you point your finger at your subconscious mind, see what has happened that's led to you looking for yourself or realizing it lost is you've snapped out of this subjective seat of your subconscious mind. You know, when we're seated in our subconscious mind like this, and we're looking at the world, first off, all of this is coming over and returning to us what it wants and needs to see. And we are not separate from the experience we're having. That is of ourself. Specifically where there's misunderstandings, pain that we need to heal from, our mind literally projects that pain and misunderstanding out into the world and returns to us an experience, the experience we need to have to heal it, to understand where we don't. And that is why a great place to begin, if you're looking to experience your subconscious mind, after you admit that, oh, I just thought I knew what the subconscious mind is. And that's good. It develops a place for it, for you to understand that, to not be all of it. And it leaves the space. And what you've got to do is develop an understanding inside of your subconscious mind through the space of admitting, I don't know. And through observing your experience, realizing it to be a reflection of it, of yourself, to realize it as itself. That's consciousness, self-awareness. And the experience you're having, if you are here, like imagine if you're here and you go looking for yourself, first off, it's because it's time. That's because the experience you're having has led to you looking for yourself or becoming lost. That's because you've likely healed most of the way. And until then, what you're being confronted with are chances to heal, chances to become the person you've always wanted to be but aren't being, where you know that you can be doing better. All the doubt that you have about yourself, chances to overcome it, because it returns before you can have anything else going on in your life to some extent. There's holes in your subconscious mind where you have pain and misunderstandings. And that is what is being projected out into your experience and giving you an experience of yourself, the worst parts of it. And that's why we run from it. Because it's our pain and misunderstandings and unhealed trauma that it presents itself as in our experience. I don't know how, but you know all of this. And that's how you can't see it. It's from like when we're really young, we realize this or something, like what I'm saying to you must ring true, because I realized it as something that I knew, that I understood, not understood, but knew to be the truth, to that I was running from myself, but not understanding that I couldn't get away, because that is what the experience I was having is. The very parts of myself I want to get away from. You can't, dude, get away from yourself. And if there are things that you need to heal from and understand better, the more potent, the more potent it is, the quicker and smaller these circles of it coming back to you in your experience is going to be. And you need to, whatever it might be, you will need to stop doing this or whatever. Your experience will give you chances to make a choice, the choice to make. And if you don't ever make it, this is still going to happen, but it's going to be through a reckoning. It's going to be without your choice. And then what other choice are you going to make? And to some extent, that's when the only time you're going to make the choice of doing what it takes to realize yourself as lost and admit that, is when you have no other choice. It sure was with me. I realized my life to be at a complete standstill as circles I was going in over and over, being with girlfriends. I needed a girlfriend. The relationship went to shit. I needed a girlfriend. I got another girl. I didn't want to be alone, and I was using these girls to get away from myself. And I realized the choice that I had to make was, okay, I'm not getting in another relationship until I'm okay alone. You know, as this person looking back that I couldn't be alone with and was trying to get away from, I would blame these girls for not being able to deal with. Now, how bizarre is that? I couldn't deal with myself. That's why they were in my life. How could I expect them to deal with the very person that I was using them to get away from? And it's things like that I realized, and I talk about maybe in that undeniable truth that exists, that when it happens in our experience as this thing, as this realization that we can't get away from, it starts building this foundation of our understanding of the world that we're in and of ourselves in it. And when some realization like that happens, I'm like, I can't even deal with myself. And I'm about to get in another relationship and blame this person for not being able to deal with me. You can't do it. That's trying to get away from yourself, would be for me to try to do that again. And I did multiple times, but it became so clear to me that I was going to have to run really fast, maybe get with a mucky girl that I didn't even give a shit about, and really start treating them like shit, because I was mad at myself for not stopping it. And it just gets worse and worse, and these circles get smaller and smaller. And when you realize things like that, there's nowhere to go. And that's why I say I had no choice. That was actually the exact kind of thing I was sitting with, this undeniable truth. And I realized this undeniable truth to be the thing that, like I talk about, it's like I knew these things. Must be because we go our whole lives doing it. I saw myself to be lost, and I saw my experience telling me, not understood like this at the time, but I had to make a change. It was not going to let my life progress. And you know, I don't want to say that these other people in these relationships weren't doing the same thing, because they were. And using a relationship for that, you know, two people that can't really deal with themselves all the way, just dealing with each other's shit instead, is not that bad of a thing. I'm not here to tell you that this is what you need to do. But if you've realized this as something you need to do, is who I'm talking to. And if you are still watching this, positively at this point, this happens to you only when you're capable of overcoming it. Because, trust me, dude, as I talked about, this intelligence in our subconscious mind has to develop to some extent to realize it as itself. Through this knowledge base of all that we know and understand, gets so intelligent that it realizes it, because our identity is trapped up in here, ourself, as who we are. And that only happens because you are so intelligent. Period. And at the time and by the time that happens, you become conscious, and you become conscious only when you're capable of moving on from a subconscious state of being. Not through picking up a self-help book because you went to a crystal or not. I know this is the moving into your higher self from your lower self. And I used to think all of that was just woo-woo crystal. And see, it's still coming out of me. But there's a lot of truth to that. But a lot of that is posers. Complete posers who has just turned their self into this thing that acts like they understand it. And a lot of us run around doing that. And I want to say really quick, it's not about moving on from this idea of ourselves that we had. It's about healing all of this pain and trauma and misunderstanding underneath so that we can go back and be seated here without it and have the same experience of ourself, but now ourself is healed. Now ourself understands. And now we can really, really begin to be through. Instead of this going out and around and coming back to us, we sit not in front of it, but behind it. And it begins to flow outward. And we begin to make our experience, create things, our experience, without our experience being us. And, so it's not a bad thing, this whole thing that I'm talking about, being seated in your subconscious mind. And it's not a bad thing to not know it, and that's where you are. But if there's pain and trauma inside of you that's not getting out of the way in your experience to the extent that you need it to, and you're going to make it or go try to run from yourself into very thick, pokey walls over and over until you wind up doing drugs or whatever it might take to get away from yourself. What did I say? Surely enough, it is not trying to get away from. It is not throwing to the side. It is not pointing at and saying, and this is what we call our ego. As the ego, we really lack an understanding of what the ego is. It's the same way as with the mind. We have this idea of the ego, and we say, oh, that's the ego. My ego gets it. Yeah, but this, until you realize and separate yourself from a place of being seated subjectively, being identified as it, you are your ego. The ego being this conceptual self, this idea of who we are. You're lost there. And a lot of us get lost there and start talking about the ego just like we talk about ourselves as it, lacking an understanding. And this is what I was getting at. I'm back here seated in my subconscious mind as myself. I am myself. Consciously. When we split from this, point a finger at it, and shift up into our conscious mind, this place that was like asleep, not active, we reactivate our conscious mind and exercise this option to be conscious. And now we become split. And it's not over. You wind up pointing a finger at yourself saying, oh, that's me, oh, that's me, oh, that's me. The whole point is you come up here into your conscious mind and realize, form an understanding of this self that you now can see because you aren't looking through the glasses of it. You know, when you're looking for yourself as this thing, it's like having a pair of glasses on. And you're like, why do I see everything the way that I do, blah, blah. And then you become, it's like taking the glasses off. And you look up and the whole world has changed. And you have these glasses, dude, as the whole experience you've had of yourself and your life up to that point. They are not to throw in the fire. They are the very things you're going to study through consciously without getting lost and identifying as it again, as it not just doing what you need to forget that you have glasses on, putting them on, taking them off, putting them on, taking them off, putting them on, observing yourself that is being thrown out in front of you for you to experience. Now realizing that, now consciously watching to understand yourself, to form this new understanding of yourself, you use your experience. Why do you see things the way that you see things? Why do you feel like this about that? Why do you hate this person who everybody else likes? Why do you like this person who everybody else hates? You realize your life to be set up in this way that has been tending to all this pain and trauma. And again, that foundation of undeniable truth. On top of it, what is? Who am I? That's there. What is there. The ground's there. People are there. People talk shit. You get in trouble a little bit by your parents. All that's undeniable truth. And you have that there. On top of that, you've built this world that is a confirmation of this pain and trauma and doubt that you have about yourself. And that is what you have to start taking apart and finding inside of the truth of empathy to understand that it's not your fault. You stood no chance. There's nothing wrong with it. You're not bad or weak. And in fact, if you're at this place, you're very, very, very strong and at the top notch of what it means to be a human being. In this world especially, you're doing fucking great. It's a joke to think if you're here, if you've lost yourself and you're looking for it, if you're finding it, realizing it, these things that I'm saying, and putting together this understanding that you're having to charter through the darkness of other people's opinions and shit to make. It is a joke to think anyone would ever ask anything more of you to do, to be satisfied, dude. And it's not long after you go through here, you just a very little bit of realizing what's happening will put you in a state more satisfied with yourself than you've ever been.